Okay, so this is my video response to the week of November 11th. So the first article that I wanted to touch on, so the first article listed, I have two things to draw from that article. Two different quotes. The first is that needs are defined in terms of what students have to offer. The reason that I'm bringing this up and I'm bringing it interesting is because in my head, I've always been a type of person to be like, well, sometimes things are too subjective to be good. Um, but this actually makes me think that subjectivity isn't always bad. So, for example, if I can only walk on one leg and the people that I'm trying to help absolutely need volunteers that have two legs, then I can't provide them service and they don't have a need, so to say, because it's something that I cannot offer. So kind of tying that into another quote, there's a quote in the same article that says volunteerism and these like student organizations and just in the volunteerism like culture in general shouldn't substitute or shouldn't become so it shouldn't substitute for government intervention. And immediately I'm like, yeah, duh, yeah, of course. But kind of tying it into that first quote, in my head, there's the situations where the government actually shouldn't get involved. Um, Places like a ghetto or a slum, where there's just culture within like these like quote unquote problems that we have in society. Of course, like poverty is a problem, except like there's different things that the culture of a slum or a ghetto creates that we don't necessarily see as problems like within a ghetto or a slum that society would. And in those situations, the government doesn't see, like kind of tying it into the first quote, needs are defined in terms of what students have to offer, or in my head, in terms of what somebody providing service has to offer. The government cannot offer help in these situations, so there is no need for them to provide help, if I'm explaining that correctly. So I think the article as a whole kind of made me question how I feel about service and volunteerism, just because I'm very much a person who believes volunteering should be with good intention and should be because you genuinely want to help, not because you just have something to offer to the cause, so to speak, in terms of the first quote. Moving on to the second article, I chose an excerpt. I'm hoping I'm quoting this excerpt right. It's the one with like a mom talking to her son, and then the son kind of takes a story because the mom dies. But basically, my point is, he talks about the mom tells the son like, "Oh, your dad is coming, but your dad is a white man, so you can't call him your dad. You have to call him like bonjour, bonsoir, something in French that I probably can't pronounce." Anyways, she tells him that he's a good man, and so because he's a good man, they have to protect his reputation. And so in my head, that kind of tied everything together that I read so far, or I had read so far then, because I am very much, I think that like part of like big organizations getting involved with volunteering or service work is because they want to protect their reputation as like a good thing versus them actually having like an something to offer to these things that are in need. And I'm sure I'm like missing the entire theme of the excerpt, but I kind of like to tie all of the articles together. So that's how I tied them all together in my head. And then the last article talks about like freedom, and then it's like a really long interview. But the thing that I drew from that most was how subjective things can get when it comes to like freedom, when it comes to things like that. So I think I wanted it to just kind of close up the video talking about subjectivity and how I kind of view it different actually because of the first article. So I think that with this, like kind of talking about freedom in general, I think that freedom is something even that's subjective, and that's not a bad thing that it's subjective. I think that subjectivity is not necessarily a bad thing. And I do think that too much objectivity and all of these things that I'm talking about, like in service learning and stuff like that, I know I'm like making my video about something different, but I think that's just kind of what I'm gathering my thoughts to. Yeah, but so in conclusion, I think that service learning and freedom and volunteering and the government and the second article, just a lot of like anecdotes and personal convictions about the things we're talking about. I think all of it kind of leads me to this idea that, I don't know, it's just subject to the person or the organization that you're providing service from. And by service, I mean like volunteering, stuff like that. So yeah.